Willkommen zu 99 zu 1. Welcome back to 99 zu 1. My name is Nadim. And why is it not showing on the screen? Because it should. Now it is. There we go. And we have our quite regular guest back in the house, Aurélie Daher. Welcome back, Aurélie.
Hello, everybody. Bonjour.
Bonjour. This is the third episode on Hezbollah. We have already produced two episodes. One was a more general introduction into, let's say, common narratives about Hezbollah. The second one then dealt with the popularity of Hezbollah, in particular with the popularity of Hezbollah as a military organization. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the social aspects of that organization and how they contribute to their popularity. Before we do that, I want to go through a small introduction for everybody who hasn't seen those episodes. Who's Aurélie and what are we talking about? We're talking about this book here and Aurélie's work, which is basically a PhD and an ongoing work on Hezbollah. This book is called Mobilization and Power, Hezbollah, Mobilization and Power. Aurélie is a French and English Arabic speaking academic who teaches political science and sociology of conflicts at the University of Paris Dauphine, Institut Pratique du Journalisme, and Sciences Po Paris. So I'm going to have trouble with that every time. She holds a master's degree in public management for ESCP Europe, as well as a master's degree in political science, a DEA in sociology of the Muslim world, and a PhD in political sciences from Sciences Po Paris. Her research focuses on Hezbollah, obviously, Middle Eastern Shiism, Lebanese and Middle Eastern politics. She also works on new aspects of Middle Eastern jihadism and its repercussions on European societies. I mean, I'm repeating always the same stuff. Maybe there's something you want to add, Aurélie, or should we just jump in to the topic of today?
You're perfect. We'll just take 10 minutes at the end so I can give you a little French lesson.
Yes. No, thank you. I got to go on time. So
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I can imagine. You have other things to do.
Okay. The reasons for Hezbollah's popularity in Lebanon. Today, we want to talk about something that they are also actually well known for, which is their whole social action apparatus. So they're the way that they integrate in society, and they also try to do social work there. So maybe I'll just give that to you like this. What is Hezbollah's social action institutions? What are they doing there, and how does this contribute to its popularity among the Lebanese population?
Yes. Okay, that's an important topic, because this is definitely one of the two occasions where Hezbollah is very often called an État dans l'État, a state within the state. So, but before maybe presenting that Hezbollah network for social action, I would like to highlight one thing. We need to keep in mind that Hezbollah is not the only political party in Lebanon which has that kind of institution, that kind of social action apparatus. As I said, so Hezbollah, yes, is more than other parties called a state within a state because of that social action apparatus. It is also called a state within a state on different occasions because obviously of the IRL, the Islamic resistance in Lebanon, the military part of the organization, and the fact that, for instance, it does not respond to the Lebanese government, or it's not placed under the authority of the Lebanese state. But that's maybe something we might address in another episode because there's a lot to say about that and about Hezbollah and Lebanese domestic politics. But so regarding the Hezbollah social action network, so Hezbollah, yes, is organized around a large network of associations, foundations, charity structures, and usually observers are, whether they like Hezbollah, they do not like Hezbollah, they all agree on the fact that they're impressed by both the diversity of the network, the professionalism and high efficiency of some of them, and the number of people in Lebanon whose lives are actually impacted by that network, the number of people who benefit from that network. We also have strong theories about huge amounts of money supposedly distributed by Hezbollah to the Shia community through this network. And the fact that, according to some people, that is what explains why Hezbollah is popular, way more than actually the military prowesses, or at least it helps maintaining the popularity that started with the military victories. That is also presented by some analysts as the reason why Hezbollah wins regularly local and legislative elections in Shia areas in Lebanon. But guess what? I think that we need to give all of that a little bit of nuance. There is a lot to say about that notion of Hezbollah redistributing a lot of money in its community. One other important thing we need to keep in mind is that, weirdly enough, the existence, the broadness, the scope of this network is not exactly the reason, or let's say it helps in entertaining the popularity of Hezbollah, but not necessarily for the reasons we think. So, as I said, it's very Lebanese, okay? It's politically to have or to develop, to run series of social action institutions. We need to keep in mind that Lebanon is a country with a particular political system that is called the consociational system. And in consociational countries, basically state institutions, central institutions tend to stand in the background. They take the back seat, if you'd rather, and they leave the communities of the country. We're talking, obviously, in Lebanon, confessional communities, but you have consociational countries like Switzerland and Belgium, Bosnia, etc., where all sorts of communities, as I said, religious, but also national and ethnic, linguistic, depends on the country. Basically, all these communities, they're led by the state to run and to provide the population with social services. So that's not something that is typical to Hezbollah. In those countries, in consociational countries, the state actually is not considered even by the population to be the one who should provide those services. Each community organizes its own network around all sorts of foundations, institutions that are dedicated exactly to serving the community. They even run the day-to-day, the whole lives of the community. The people in countries like Lebanon, for instance, are married, baptized, buried by their communities way before by the states. I mean, it's the communities, the religious leaders, the community leaders who deal with everything that is related to the people's everyday life. And then the state acts a little bit like the secretary in the background, who takes notice, sends all the official papers to the archives. But this is it.
This is quite important because I think people in Germany, in the West, don't have really no idea how the political system and specifically in Lebanon works. So maybe let's ask a question about that. If it's really organized like this, where the state is kind of like an umbrella, maybe secretary function, and a lot of the social communal work actually, keeping up, maybe even keeping up some of the infrastructure, community centers, renovating playgrounds, stuff like this is basically relegated to the communities and their organization. Yeah, kind of like an more autonomous way to let these communities organize themselves. Isn't that already like opening then the door for what some would call like political clientelism, I think it's called in English. So I don't know, bigger parties that maybe represent the community that is more affluent, has more money. They can allow themselves to use bigger budgets and invest in their communities, or even, invest after some consideration in some other communities, and thereby kind of strengthen their position in society, and with disregard to strengthening others. So this is why also ultimately you ended up in a situation in Lebanon where it was very clear that Shia people were much more, poor and much less affluent than, for example, Christian society in Lebanon. So isn't that then also one of the consequences of a system like that?
Oh yeah, definitely, absolutely. That's absolutely what happens, and that's actually the reason why most parties invest in those networks. That's why most parties, including Hezbollah, offer services also transconfessionally, because the idea, especially when it comes to political clientelism, and obviously those parties are thinking elections. You want to mobilize within your community, but you also want to drag as many votes as possible outside the community. So most communities, if you were to describe it a little bit more, if we were to try to visualize things a little bit more clearly. So most communities in Lebanon have their own hospitals, for instance, school systems. Okay, that's the minimum most of the time. And then parties, they have eventually charity foundations of their own, or they have shares in hospitals and school systems in their communities. That's the political parties. All the same, those hospitals and schools, as I said, usually open their doors to everyone in Lebanon. The charity foundations might be a little bit different, a little bit more community-centered. They tend to help first and foremost the people of their own community. But if they do not have, serious money issues, then they will be willing, to go beyond the community. Now, health and education are big things in that what we call a non-state or deprived of state space that is left to the communities. So are the media, by the way, again, for obvious reasons, political reasons. So most parties in Lebanon, or at least the main ones, they all have, at least a TV channel, a daily newspaper, and a radio station. That does not mean, by the way, that there is no state television channel, okay, or some transconfessional, I would say, neutral radio stations. But they will never have the means financially in terms of support, but also in terms even of attendance, like people watching them, listening to them. They will never have the financial, technical means and popularity that those, that are affiliated to the political parties. And I'm going to give an example because that I really want to highlight, because we're all about, Hezbollah and their social network, as if it was the only one, or if it's not the only one, way more powerful, more complete and more efficient than the others. Well, again, we have to be a little bit nuanced because, okay, that's not the case anymore, or not as, it's not as relevant as it were maybe 15 years ago. But for instance, in the 90s and the early 2000s, the most complete and most efficient network for social action was actually the Sunni one that was run by the Hariri family. So Rafiq Hariri, for maybe those of us here who are not familiar with the personage, with the character. So Rafiq Hariri was more than once prime minister in Lebanon, starting in 1992. He's the one who was assassinated in 2005, and his assassination kind of led to the end of the Syrian tutelage over Lebanon. So anyways, he was a Sunni billionaire, and very early on, basically, he started a whole charity network. And that network actually was of great help for him, for his political ambition, especially that when he started as a prime minister in 1992, he was almost an unknown person on the political scene. He was really an outsider. So when he created his main Sunni party, the Future Current, basically that charity network, that social action network, really helped him build a strong electorate, a strong even charisma and legitimacy within the community. And for instance, he was very famous for distributing huge gallons of olive oil, huge bags of grains, plus a couple of $100 bills at every elections. But by the way, this is very frequent in Lebanon, whatever the community. That was not just his thing. But what really made him, what was really special about his system that made it so popular and so efficient, is that he had a whole system of grants and fellowships that he set for young Lebanese high schoolers coming from everywhere in Lebanon, from all sects, but obviously people who couldn't, kids who couldn't afford to go to college. And he paid so many tuitions to send them actually to the best universities, starting with the American University of Beirut and Université Saint-Joseph. So he paid so many tuitions that, and eventually what he did also, that he granted jobs in his institutions and his companies in priority to people, to graduates who came from, who went to university thanks to one of his fellowship programs. And that gave him a huge popularity transconfessionally. And by the way, Hezbollah does not have that system of grants and fellowships. They never had that. And till today, they do not have something of a similar size or scope. They do have like a small scholarship, grants, stuff like that, but it's more like for mid-schoolers, high schoolers, and that's really way more for the Shia community. It's not a transconfessional thing.
So are you saying then that the basically like this Sunni-based social network is more efficient, more effective, better than Hezbollah's social network, and therefore also, I don't know, more popular or something like that?
Not exactly. What I'm saying is that they're different and they work differently. The Hezbollah network is quite different from actually not just the Sunni one, from actually all the other communities, social action networks. It's not Hezbollah's network for social action is not about actually the amount of money that they redistribute. Actually, Hezbollah, I'm talking the civil part of the organization. I'm not talking about the military. The military is completely different. Hezbollah is paradoxically, and Albert Einstein said everything is relative, okay? But relatively, whether in comparison with the military part of the organization or even in comparison with other political parties in Lebanon, is poor, I would say. They don't distribute a lot of money. It's way more about service, values, and building tight connections with the society. I would say that one of the main differences, for instance, between if you compare, let's stay in the Shia house, let's stay within the Shia community. Obviously, the other big Shia party, Amal, okay, that is run by Nabih Berri, head of the parliament since 1992. Basically, if you compare both, Amal is way more into that clientelist patronage system. Their services, their MPs is about, helping people either, finding money to basically pay the bills at the end of the month, or to pay, the tuition fees for the kids at school, or a hospital bill, or even find a job. Okay, Nabih Berri has put his hand, I would say, on so many services and departments, even within the Lebanese state, that basically, some services in some ministries are kind of reserved to Amal. So if you are a Shia and you're looking for a job, basically you can go and you will go and ask Amal for that, not Hezbollah. Hezbollah doesn't do that. That whole clientelist patronage thing is not what they do. And I would even say that Hezbollah, at the end of the day, is not really about serving the community. It's way more about serving the IRL, serving the resistant through an action within the society. It's quite different.
Yeah, that's interesting, because one of the talking points I've heard also, and when discussing Hezbollah here in the West, is the idea that so much of its popularity is garnered from the fact that they are distributing money to everyone and keeping everybody alive. I mean, this is also a narrative that people have said about Hamas, for example, in Gaza. The way that you put it now, it sounds more like they are not really that. At least they're not really focusing on everyday average Lebanese, but more like their institutions serve their fighters, basically their combatants from the IRL. Is that then the case?
Okay, so the IRL is definitely the privileged part of the organization. Okay, they don't have money issues. Everything is covered from, the rent, the house, the villa, the holidays, the health insurance, everything is covered, the car, whatever, the school of the kids, the college, etc. Now, when it comes to Hezbollah, again, as a civil organization, all Lebanese from all sects and all ideologies do benefit from Hezbollah's services, okay? But that, again, not in the classical tradition of Lebanese clientelism, in the sense that, quick reminder, okay? When Israel invaded Lebanon in 1982, it's the IRL, okay, the Islamic resistance, that was created first, not Hezbollah, okay? The military came first. Then after a few months, the military understood something that led to the creation of Hezbollah, but it's still actually very military oriented. They understood that their action was going to that their action against Israel was going to generate retaliation, obviously, from the Israelis, and that the people of the South, mainly Shiite people, amongst whom the IRL would need to recruit combatants, the people of the South would probably suffer a lot from those retaliation, and at the end of the day, either not support or stop support the idea of resisting Israel. Because we need to go back to the 1982 context. In 1982, very few people in Lebanon were still favorable to the idea of opposing the Israelis. People were tired of all sorts of violence, tired of the civil war, tired of the militias, tired of the consequences of the Israeli invasion of 1978, tired of the recurrent attacks against the Palestinians and the South, and the Palestinian attacks against Israel, and the Lebanese being caught in between. They were very tired, completely disgusted with, the whole pan-Arab leftist discourses about, that big Arab solidarity. And one day you'll see the Arab governments, the Arab armies, the Arab streets, everybody's going to rise like one man and, put an end to that whole Israeli problem, etc., and save Palestine. They didn't believe in it anymore. Okay. They just wanted that whole violence to end. So obviously, when there's shady Hezbollah guy, Islamic resistance guy showed up, it was like, oh God, just another group, just like all the others, and they're gonna promise us that they're gonna that this time is gonna be different. So people were not ready, to believe them. Basically, the IRL needed to make an extra effort to be able to mobilize within the community and even to basically have support outside the community. So the number one purpose of that social network that they eventually built, and that came to be called Hezbollah, the number one purpose was to fix exactly that. The idea was to have a network of institutions that will not help socioeconomically the community. Okay, it's not a welfare state. That's not the point of the system. The system is to heal the wounds of the Lebanese who would get harmed by the Israelis, repair the damages, rebuild everything that the Israelis would destroy. The point is to have the Lebanese suffer as little as possible from both the occupation and the war effort carried by the IRL. Basically, the idea is we IRL are going to break, because the expression, you break it, you buy it. Okay, so we're going to obviously generate damage from our resistance work. Don't worry, we'll pay for it. That's the idea. So the idea is that the Lebanese, and not just the Shia, all of the Lebanese can benefit from the Hezbollah Social Action Network. And again, the idea is not to bring the Lebanese Shia community to, for instance, the socioeconomic level of the Sunnis, of the Christians. It's not about, filling the gap. It's not even about helping Hezbollah win the elections, because at the end of the day, they don't even need that. The military victories are enough, okay? But it's more about helping the Lebanese bear the war effort and maintain the support of the Lebanese, who, especially those who suffer from the Israeli action, to the resistance cause. So at the end of the day, they're working for the resistance through the Lebanese society, but the real target, the real effort is to serve the IRL. They act as a backup, as a complementary system to the IRL, not as an action or not as a system that really cares at the end of the day about the socioeconomic situation, about the Shia. And that's so not Lebanese when it comes to understanding the Lebanese way of practicing clientelism and patronage. That's a totally different thing.
Okay. I mean, on the one hand, it rings a bell. It's like, okay, I don't know. Last episode, you talked about how Israel would cap off the water in the south of Lebanon and have all these pumps there, basically diverging the water to the north of Israel. And once the occupation was over, Hezbollah came and destroyed all of this stuff. And probably while they are fighting, they destroy a lot of stuff and they go and then they repair that, and maybe they help people that have been maimed or injured or something like this and offer support there. So basically they kind of position themselves as the menders of the horrors and pains of the occupation and the war against Israel. But it's like, but you're saying they are somehow different from the regular clientelism in Lebanon, and it sounds to me like, is that so different? I mean, in the end, aren't they not also doing more or less the same as other groups would do in a situation like this? Can you maybe explain a little bit what you said now in the end when you said that's so different from the clientelism?
So maybe I can do. You know what? I'm gonna maybe walk you through maybe a few institutions of Hezbollah, how they work, basically, especially the main ones, and maybe that's gonna make my point a little bit clearer. So if we were to give a number, how many institutions they have, I would say a little bit less than a dozen, something like that. Okay, between 10 and 12. Interestingly enough, that's more than the average Lebanese political party. They have it's more diverse. They have more institutions, but in the same time, among those 10 to 12 institutions, they have only one charity foundation. One out of a dozen. One is really about helping the poor, etc., helping really at the economic level. 1 out of 10, and that's very few this time in comparison with other political parties in Lebanon. So we have more social institutions than other parties, but less charity oriented. Now, if I were to pick the biggest and the most strategic Hezbollah institution, I would say, and obviously the best funded, I would say that's definitely the Martyr Foundation, okay? Muassasat al-Shahid. I would also probably rank maybe almost ex aequo what is called Jihad al-Bina, or the Reconstruction Effort Association. Let's translate that like that. And then if I were to choose a third one, definitely the Foundation of War Wounded, okay? Muassasat al-Jarha. And by the way, Muassasat al-Jarha, to which are tied a whole series of hospitals, clinics, pharmacies. They even have their own, what we call civil defense, Madani, in Lebanon, which is a kind of a combination between an emergency management system where you have both firefighter squads and ambulances system. Okay. Now, let's look maybe a little bit more in detail into those three institutions in particular. They're really the ones I think that illustrate better what I mean. The Martyrs Foundation is a foundation that supports the families of the resistant combatants that die fighting the Israelis. When I say they support the family, by family I mean obviously the wives, the children, but also, very important, the parents of the combatant. Because in Lebanon, we do not have a system of, retirement houses where basically one can send their parents when they're too old to stay alone in their homes. We don't do that. What happens is usually is that the eldest son or one of the sons who basically is wealthy enough to do so, the eldest son will take his parents in, and his family will take care of his parents till they die. So back to, remember, 82, when I said a lot of people were not into resistance. So one problem Hezbollah had was to try to convince mothers or wives to let their son or husband fight with the IRL. And obviously, they were the ones who would say, my husband, my son isn't going anywhere. Because, well, first of all, I don't want him to die. And second, socioeconomically speaking, they are the pillar of the house. So one of the questions, I would say, one of the questions that would pop up all the time was like, if my son dies with you in the light of duty, who's going to take care of me and my husband when we are old? So the foundation of the martyr covers all the needs of the family. We're talking the rent, the car, the health insurance, school fees, college fees, everything is paid for. Now, the War Wounded Foundation is a health institution that covers the medical needs, but this time of any Lebanese, whatever their religion, even their ideological orientation. You can vote for Samir Jaja and still go to the War Wounded Foundation. Obviously, you don't brag about it, but that's perfectly possible. Any Lebanese who gets wounded in Israeli attack, basically can benefit from the services of the War Wounded Foundation. So Hezbollah, in those cases, they provide things like appointments with specialized doctors. They cover the fees for the IRMs, any kind of medical tests, the medication, obviously. They pay for the surgeries, how do you call them in English? Prostheses,
prosthetics, yeah, like amputees get these prosthetics too.
Exactly. They pay for the wheelchairs, etc. They even send, for instance, architects and engineers to your house or your apartment to make it more accessible. For instance, let's suppose you become handicapped, you're going to be in a wheelchair, etc. Basically, they will cover absolutely everything. And then, as I said, Jihad al-Bina, so the Reconstruction Effort Association. This one is absolutely huge. It's a reconstruction organization that rebuilds and fixes all the material damages that are caused by Israel. They rebuild absolutely everything. I'm talking houses, buildings, offices, stores, but also roads, bridges, schools, hospitals, mosques, churches. Anything Israel destroys or damages, as I said, they do it, and they do it transconfessionally. They cover everything. And by the way, like a little example of what Jihad al-Bina is capable of doing. So in 2006, on the very first day of the ceasefire, they really didn't lose a minute. Their trucks, caterpillars, diggers, everything, tractors, everything was sent on the destroyed site. They took away all the rubbles. What they did is they distributed to each family who lost their home the equivalent of a whole year of rent. So the family basically can have a place to stay while Jihad al-Bina, while the Reconstruction Association would rebuild a home for them. And in the Dahiyas, the southern suburbs of Beirut, for instance, that was left in a very bad shape by the Israelis after 2006. In Dahiya, they even had a very special program, called the Wa'ad Project, which means the pledge or the promise project. And at the end of it, when they achieved it, Hezbollah officials even organized like that huge ceremony where all the people of Dahiya who lost their homes or their place of work, everybody was invited. And they officially, solemnly handed the keys of their new places, the new offices, to the people. And at the end of the day, the Lebanese government started to try to evaluate like how many people basically benefited from that program. And between the numbers of the Lebanese government, the numbers given by Hezbollah and other urban experts, let's put it this way, we can reasonably agree on the fact that more than 20,000 people eventually profited from this reconstruction project. And the project, according to the same numbers, cost up to something like $400 million.
Yeah, I was about to say that all sounds really expensive. So where did they get the money from? Is that all from that money stash under that hospital that Israel recently showed?
Okay. Let's talk money. Okay. Yes, quite the obsessive question in the West. Yes, and obviously, I mean, we understand why. Okay. Hezbollah has more than one way of making money. Okay, they have many ways to fund their activities and the organization in general. Now, before or in order to explain where the money comes from, I'm gonna open a small parenthesis and I'm gonna talk a little bit about Shiism and Shiite clergy and the organization of the Shiite religious world. Don't worry, I'm not gonna go with a very long doctoral expose on religious taxes in Islam, but all the same, I need just to insert a little explanation. Otherwise, like it's going to be completely impossible to understand for so many people. So, in Islam, very quickly, in Islam, whether you're Shia or you're Sunni, basically, if you're a pious Muslim, you're expected to pay a religious tax called zakat. So zakat, that's roughly 2.5% of anything you earn. All the same, careful, that tax is not dedicated to supporting clerics. It's a tax that is supposed to help the poor. So the clerics collect it, but they cannot live from it. They have to redistribute the zakat to the people in need. That's all the Muslims, okay? Sunni and Shia alike. Now the Shia, in addition to the zakat, they pay another religious tax that Sunnis never heard of. And that religious tax is called khums. So khums in Arabic means fifth, like in 20%. Yes, 20%. 20% of any salary, any wages, any added value, any profit you make from any, economic transaction, 20% for anything you make when you're a Shia, you have to pay it in religious taxes. In that, in the name of that khums, or as the khums. Now, while the zakat is for the poor and the clerics cannot touch it, the khums is, a contrario, dedicated to supporting the Shia clerics and their projects and activities. Now, this money is not paid to every and any cleric. It's not like, oh, I like my padre in my neighborhood, so I'm going to give him 20% for him to use, 20% of everything I earn for him to use. No. Doesn't work like that. In Shiism, you have a clergy, which you do not have in Sunnism, or at least not on paper. The Shia world, the Shia clerical world, is very clear, very hierarchical, and the idea is at the top of the pyramid, you have a number of what you could see as equivalents of popes. Let's put it this way, in the sense that they are the highest rank in the clerical hierarchy. There's more than one. But let's put it this way, you have roughly 5 or 6 of those popes that really matter and that basically collect more, the vast majority of the vast part of that khums money in the Shia world. So those clerics are called marjas, whatever, they're grand ayatollahs if you want. So what happens is this, you're a good Shia, you choose a pope of your liking, okay? Up to you to decide. Obviously, it depends whether you're progressive, conservative, very progressive, very conservative. You will eventually find a pope to your liking. And what you do is, it's a kind of, not a gentleman's agreement, but basically it's a personal commitment. You commit to that pope. You're going to follow their fatwas, their edits, their religious edits, etc. And in return for everything they do for the community, you pay them the 20% of everything you earn. That money circulates obviously through a network of representatives. Every big Majah has his own networks of, under clerics, and then under it goes all the way, from the top to the bottom. You give them money, and then the money goes up all the way to the Grand Ayatollah of your choice. Now, as you can imagine, 20% of all what the pious Shia of the world make, distributed over 5 or 6 people, that's quite a lot of money, okay? And that also explains why, for instance, some countries or some governments could have been a little bit uncomfortable with the idea of having those Marjas living on their lands. Like, take Iraq, for instance. Saddam Hussein was obsessed his whole life because he had in Najaf, in the south of Iraq, the heart of the Shiite clerical world, and a bunch of those grand Majah there who sometimes had more money on their accounts than the Iraqi state itself, almost.
The Elon Musk of the Iraq, basically.
Kind of. Yeah. But anyway, but some ayatollahs, well, maybe not, it depends obviously on the period of the state or of the Iraqi depends on which Iraqi regime we're talking, because obviously, Iraq also had, for a while, a lot of money from the the oil industry, etc. But what I mean is that all the same, some ayatollahs have more money on their bank accounts than, for instance, the treasury of quite a lot of Arab countries or third world countries. So as you can imagine, they can be seen, especially for a regime that is not Shia friendly, like Saddam Hussein was, they could see them as a kind of a fifth column. You never know when they're gonna pop up a fatwa saying, I order all the Shia of Iraq to march over Baghdad and topple down the regime of Saddam Hussein. They had the money and they had the authority to do so. So anyway, so that money.
Question. Just a sec, because of the dimension of the money. Yeah. You said pious Shia, they pay that, basically, and it sounds like that's a voluntary action, or is that actually then enforced with, like in Shia regions there, that everybody that makes money has to pay that? And how much would that turn out to be in the end? How many pious Shia are there that pay their 20% dues?
Well, I don't know what they do in Bahrain. I don't know what they do in Iraq. But for instance, in Lebanon, a country I know well, in Shia areas that I know well, no, nothing is compulsory. Plus, obviously, it depends on your socioeconomic situation. Most families, Shia families, pious families that I know, who pay their khums, some months, some years, sometimes they don't pay because they can't afford it. And, the sheikh to whom they pay, they're understanding, like, okay, they're not gonna go after you, like, did you pay this month? They don't have like an accountability book where, like, this family didn't pay that month. They're not gonna send you like a kind of friendly reminder or anything. It's more like, obviously, if you believe in it, if you believe in God, if you think that's the right thing to do, you gotta do it. It's a matter of personal spiritual commitment. In Lebanon, let's put it this way, I would say today we never had any official census in Lebanon since 1932. So, but I think it's rather reasonable to consider that today probably 60% of the Lebanese population is Shia. How many, which part of those 60% basically pay their khums, I couldn't tell you. But because we need to take into consideration, are they adults? Do they have a job? Do they have the means? Do their jobs allow them to pay that khums? I couldn't tell you. Honestly, I couldn't tell you. But the thing is, what we have to keep in mind is that those ayatollahs who gather that money from their followers, they do it also transnationally. Meaning, when you're a Lebanese Shia, you can perfectly choose as a marja, as your grand ayatollah, an Iranian guy, an Iraqi guy, a Bahraini guy. Same thing for all the Shia of the world. So every grand ayatollah actually collects money from Shia, but from all over the world, not just people from their own country. And what happens, because at the end of the day, let's go back to Hezbollah. So that money usually, what the ayatollahs do with it. First thing they do, obviously, they support, the religious studies schools, the religious schools. They pay for the instructors, the students, their families. So a larger part of the money stays in Najaf. This is like that huge campus, the Harvard, if you want, the Harvard University for Shia religious studies. Then a large part of the money goes to all sorts of charity programs, orphanages, charity for the poor, even profane schools. They open profane schools, etc. And then finally, a third part of the money is basically to the discretion of the Ayatollah, and he is allowed to support any project he likes or he believes in. And guess what happens? So Ayatollah Khamenei, Ali Khamenei, guide of the Iranian Revolution in Iran, who is also a marja. Now, depends. In some parts of the Shia world, some people would contest his clerical legitimacy. Whatever, as long as he has followers, as long as there are people to see him as a marja and act with him as a marja, then he will be a marja. So, anyways, long story short, Ayatollah Khamenei decided in the mid-90s that a part of the Khums money, or the part of the Khums money that he would get from the Lebanese believers, whether in Lebanon or outside of Lebanon, because we have a huge diaspora, Lebanese diaspora in the world, and especially we have a huge Shia diaspora, mainly in West Africa. So they also, pay their khums. So all the money that comes from the Lebanese to him, he decided to basically offer it, give it, let go of it to the benefit of Hezbollah's leadership. And he edited a fatwa saying all that money, basically, I'm not going to tell Hezbollah what to do with it. The Hezbollah leadership will decide what to do with it. And guess what? Hassan Nasrallah, former Secretary General of Hezbollah, then immediately edited a communique. He issued a communique. And he announced that all the money, the Khums money that would come, thanks to the guide, and obviously he thanked Ali Khamenei for that, but he announced that all the money would be granted to the IRL, to the Islamic resistance. That's why I was saying initially, the Islamic resistance doesn't have any money problems. That's a little bit more different for Hezbollah, the civil part of the organization. And the civil part of the organization, sometimes, in some situations, they can get a little bit of that money, but basically, let's put it this way, since the end of the 80s, the civil part of Hezbollah was told, both by the Iranians and by the leadership of Hezbollah, to basically find ways to fund themselves by their own means. So we have, as I said, a weird situation where we have a military part that is really comfortable, and that can, they can easily cover all the needs of their combatants and their families. And then we have the civil part of the organization where, they have to fund themselves differently. It's not necessarily, it's not Iranian money. I mean, you can have Iranian money, but then again, in very special situations, for instance, 2006, you're going to need, more money for the construction. Then maybe the Iranians will chip in, or actually, the Iranians do chip in. But I would say on a day-to-day, at the day-to-day level, doesn't work like that. Doesn't work like that at all.
So, one question that pops into my mind is: then how does the social arm then finance itself if most of the money is dedicated to IRL purposes? Where do they actually get their money from?
It depends on the institution. Actually, they're quite autonomous. They're quite autonomous in the way they have to deal with things. Let's put it this way. So I said we have roughly 10 to 12 institutions. 4 of them are branches of Iranian institutions, kind of their equivalent, starting with Muassasat al-Shahid, the Martyrs Foundation. Yeah. Yes. So it was basically created in Lebanon as a kind of a copy of what exists already in Iran, and it was created in Iran because of the war against Iraq between 1980 and 1988. So what happens is, for just 4 associations out of, as I said, almost a dozen, Iran, because they are branches of other Iranian associations, the Iranian associations, the mother associations back in Tehran, pay for the rent and pay for the wages of their employees, okay? But they don't pay for the money needed for the activities of the associations. They have to basically organize their own fundraising campaigns. Iran doesn't pay anything. At the end of the day, that doesn't cost Iran or the Iranian mother institutions quite a lot of money because, well, the rents in the Dahi are not crazy. It doesn't cut a lot to have like a few offices, like an office or two. Another thing is that the number of employees in the social institutions of Hezbollah is quite low. The social institutions of Hezbollah, if you enter those associations, you look at them, you take a look at how they work. There's a lot of people involved. But guess what? I made a little survey. It was 15 years ago, and I discovered that the number of employees or the proportion of employees amongst like all these people working in the institutions is between 10 and 50%. Those guys, yes, they get a wage, they get a salary from either Iran or Hezbollah. The rest, all the others who work in those institutions, they're volunteers. They work for, as they say, God and the cause. They're here to give, they're not here to take, okay? They're here because they want to help the cause, so they work for free. So that doesn't cost the Iranians anything, that doesn't cost Hezbollah anything. Now, for institutions, as I said, the rent and a few wages are paid by the mother institutions by back then in Iran, so that's peanuts. The question is, what about the other institutions and how they function? So, as I said, depends on the institutions. For instance, the Mahdi School, okay, the schools, the whole network of Hezbollah schools called the Mahdi schools, they live basically from the tuitions that are paid by the parents of the pupils. Normal. Al-Manar, the TV channel, okay, they own actually their own production company, and they make quite a lot of money out of it, okay? They create, for instance, a lot of video contents, and they sell them to other chains, actually. For instance, they produce films, documentaries, series, etc., even hymns, video clips, music, etc., and they sell them in Lebanon and abroad. So they're perfectly comfortable. They cover their expenses. And obviously, it's television, so they also live on, advertisement, publicity, just like any other regular media. So a part of, as I said, a part of the institutions actually end up working just like any other regular company, okay? Same thing, by the way, I was thinking, because that's funny, the Hezbollah soccer club, okay, they have a football club, Al-Ahd, okay, which plays in the Lebanese Premier League. And for some time, actually, they kept winning. These days, depends. But for instance, take the Al-Ahd. Al-Ahd, they live from, first of all, donations by the fan committee, television rights for, to broadcast the games. Again, just like any other country, any other football, team. And from advertisement, just like any other club, because, like in clubs, they have like those logos on their shirts, advertising for different companies. And so, do the Al-Ahd players. So, they cover their needs. And by the way, I'm on a German channel, right?
Yes, indeed.
That's because talking about Al-Ahd, I remember like all the interviews I did with the guys there. I think I had some of my funniest, most exotic interviews with the guys at the football club. And do you know that I even met actually one of their trainers, and that trainer actually is a German guy.
Outrageous.
Oh la la. Yeah. Ever heard about Robert? Okay, let's see how.
Robert. Okay, yeah, your turn.
I'm going to pronounce it in German. So now my turn to show how my German is really lousy. Robert Jaspert.
Robert Jaspert.
Mm. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Actually,
but close.
He was the trainer of Hezbollah. He was the coach of the Hezbollah team twice. So first time was actually in 2007. That's when basically exactly the year I went to do my fieldwork on the premises of the club, and this is where I met him. And that was so funny because I was going out. There was that little girl of one of the executives of the of the club, and she was like, "Come on, auntie," amto in the Middle East we call everybody uncle or auntie. She was, "Come on, auntie, I'll take you for a tour," and she took me everywhere. She even had me visit the showers. So that was a little bit weird, but anyways, so she took me for a tour, and then poof, I bumped into that guy that definitely doesn't look like a Hezbollah guy, tall, like the color of the hair, color of the eyes, not locally made, definitely not. And when he saw me, he was, a female presence on the premises. So we started talking, and this is where he said, "Well, yeah, I'm the coach, and I'm German, etc." And then it was really, he told me that little anecdote. He said, when I told my family that I was leaving to Beirut in order to train the Hezbollah football club, everybody, he said, everybody around me freaked out. And my friends, my family, they started crying, "Please don't go. They're going to kidnap you."
In 2007.
Yeah.
So just after the war.
Yeah. They said, like, "Don't go. They're going to kidnap you," etc. And he said, and he kept laughing while telling the story. He said that German TV channels even asked for the permission to film him as he was packing, because they were not sure that he would ever come back.
Eventually he did come back.
Yeah, he actually come back. And he went actually once again in 2000, I think 15 or 16. He became the trainer of Al-Ahd once again.
And he was in Iran also to train a team there, and in between he trained a team in Berlin, actually in the second league or regional league or something like this. So yeah, it's interesting stops in his career. I just googled that quickly. It's
wasn't he also into tennis? I think soccer is not just.
You know what? He's like by education and by his former work, he's a molecular biologist.
Ah bon?
Yeah, really.
Okay, so yeah, wow, quite the trajectory, quite the track. Yeah, the guy likes experiences.
Yeah, exactly.
He likes experimenting. Yeah, so it depends on the institution, basically. Every institution will just either work as a charity institution, and then they will ask benefactors, donors, to basically help with funding their projects, or they're going to work like any other company.
Okay, so let's try to tie all these threads now up back to the initial question, which was also in the last episode, but this episode regarding the social works of Hezbollah. How does this all contribute now in the end to Hezbollah's popularity in Lebanon?
Yes. So as I said, it's actually more about two things. Okay, the impact of that social action network actually is twofold. It's obviously about building a certain image. Okay, spreading a certain image into the Lebanese society, not just the Shia. The image, obviously, that Hezbollah is a party that takes responsibility for its military choices. That it is there. It is an organization that is there for its society, especially when they struggle with occupation or Israeli attacks. And second, it's about spreading, obviously, certain values, the love of the country, supporting the resistance, being a patriot, not being a coward in the face of foreign attacks. And I would say that one strategy, the main strategy for them while they're doing it, is not, as I said, not about the money they redistribute. It's more about the way they build very strong interpersonal, at the ground zero level, very strong interpersonal ties between the party on one side and the Lebanese society. Because at the end of the day, most of what Hezbollah offers is through, as I said, services. So, for instance, rather than do what any clientelist party would do, for instance, you have problem finding an accommodation, then either they're going to give you money for you to pay the rent, or they themselves have buildings and they're going to give you an apartment or something like that. Rather than do that, what Hezbollah does is this. For instance, we're talking about like the poor, or we're not talking time of big destructions by Israel, because as I said, then Jihad al-Bina will rush in and take care of everything. But for instance, you're a poor family, the dad just died, the mother never worked, and then you have kids in the house, and we are, for instance, in a foreign, or in an area of Lebanon that is kind of, in the middle of nowhere in the countryside. So rather than, for instance, build a house for you, what they're going to do is they will contact factories that produce cement. They're going to contact other factories that produce paint. They're going to ask them, like, do you have products that you don't use anymore, that you don't want anymore, or that maybe you couldn't sell? They have a kind of fake defect, like they have, like, they're defective for the market, but they could still work. Things that are not fashionable anymore. Give us everything. Give us all of that. Give the material. And then what they do is they send volunteers from the party who will give some of their time, and those volunteers will build the house or fix the house themselves. So the idea is, at the end of the day, it's about establishing direct human ties with their society through doing the work themselves. It's not like I'm going to give you money and then God knows what you're going to do with it. Maybe you're going to spend it on the kids. Maybe you're going to spend it on, I don't know, gambling or whatever. No, we'll take care of everything. What is your need? We'll take care of it. I remember, for instance, stuff like, so in every, they're organized, by the way, internally like a communist party. So you have sections by neighborhood in every town, okay? So every section is responsible for their neighborhood. So they work a little bit also like, vigilantes, they watch whatever is happening in the neighborhood. And basically what they do is any problem they see within the family, in their neighborhood, they, push the information forward, to the leadership, etc. And what happens is this. I remember that at some point, the municipality of my hometown, they had issues. They didn't have enough money for some time. For instance, the garbage was not collected in one of the neighborhoods of the area, and that became really problematic. They started to have rats and all sorts of stuff. And the Hezbollah guys of the section of that neighborhood, what they did is they called the hierarchy. They said, okay, we have a problem, that kind of problem in that area. And what they did is they sent Jihad al-Bina during the night. On Friday night, everybody's in bed. And they Jihad al-Bina collected all the trash and took care of it. That was it. Another thing, for instance, after 2006, a lot of people, I'm talking civilians, I'm not talking Hezbollah members, died in the bombardments, in the Israeli bombardments, just like we have today. And there was that lady, that old lady, she was, I don't know, in her early 80s, and sick, etc. And she was being taken care of by, her son and his wife. And they had 2 little kids. They were living together, etc. Anyways, the parents died in the bombardments. And the lady, she basically ended up taking care of her grandchildren by herself, but it was already super complicated. And the problem is, she needed to send them to school. And so she needed like a driver, okay, to send them. And she would go because she didn't have the means to pay a driver, like, or the school bus to come and pick the kids and take them to school. She didn't have the means. So what she would do is she would go herself, like every day, take the hands off her grandchildren and take them to school every day and then go and grab them but it was like, for her, it was like really terrible because she was old, she couldn't walk or anything. Again, she didn't ask for anything. She had her dignity, basically. She didn't want to ask for help. But guess what? Obviously, the Hezbollah members, the section of her neighborhood, either they saw it or somebody told them, like, can't you do something for the old lady? Same thing. And eventually what happened is the party paid on their own dimes a driver to come and collect the kids every morning and take them back at home. So again, as I said, you're not going to have more money on your account or in your pocket at the end of the month thanks to Hezbollah. They're not gonna distribute money to you. That's not the way they do it. But if you have a problem, they're gonna definitely, if they can solve it, they will come. So obviously the impact is that, yes, okay, it's a little bit like a clientelist system because the gratitude, the gratefulness factor is going to be there. But it's not for money, because of money or positions offered by Hezbollah. It's about, I would say, leading through example. Okay. And obviously, when you have you're in trouble and you see those young men, interfering, intervening, solving your problems, and then they just leave it. They don't ask for anything. Of course, when elections are going to come up, you don't need them to put a gun on your forehead for you to vote for them. You're going to do it very naturally, right? So that social action system actually is way more effective at building ties and kind of solidifying the roots of Hezbollah within the society, more than just you're establishing or building a regular Lebanese traditional clientelist system. It's about trust, respect, solidarity, way more than buying loyalty through material gains. And I think it's actually, if you think about it, it's really a clever strategy, because at the end of the day, contrary to those regular clientelist systems, at the end of the day, clientelist systems, the day you stop putting money into the machine, then, the loyalty fades, right? But when it is about building, as I said, those personal, and then it's I get to know you. I know this family knows that Hezbollah guy, and eventually they're going to end up, come and have a coffee with us. And, you build very, you put a face on Hezbollah, you put a name on Hezbollah, you share everyday experiences with Hezbollah. Even if the money stops at some point, the loyalty will remain. See what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that just came to my mind is it creates loyalty, respect, and all this stuff. But it's really this idea that it's not like Hezbollah is there and you people are there, but they're in this together, right? It's if somebody comes and just says, I'm going to help you build your house with my own hands, it's really shaping a commonness, a togetherness there somehow. So
plus, plus they do it together, and while they do it together, what do you think they do? They talk. They get to know each other. Exactly. And then funny stuff and the jokes and the terrible stories of each other, you share experiments.
Right.
Then it's you tie your life, your everyday life, your relationship with your town, with your neighborhood, also becomes a relationship to Hezbollah, and by the way, with everything that is happening today, so Hezbollah calls that whole thing, that idea of building that strong network with its society, it calls it Mujtama al-Muqawama, the society of resistance, the resistance society. That's what they mean by that. And they have always admitted that it is definitely one major key in the maintenance and the survival of the organization. As long, at the end of the day, as they have that, as long as that tie is still strong, that loyalty, whatever the context, through the hardships, if that loyalty, if that's the solidity of the bond between Hezbollah and the society is still there, then Hezbollah is fine. And for instance, when I talk to Hezbollah people these days, they're everything Israel destroyed, we can rebuild. The villages they are destroying, we will rebuild, etc. It's at the end of the, because obviously Hezbollah always thinks they play the long game. And the way they see it, it's not a war. What is happening right now, it's not a war. It's a battle. There's a difference between a battle and a war. You have more than one battle in a very long-term war. So it's even if Israel were to kind of gain that battle, that does not mean that they won the war at the end in 10, 20 years, 30 years, 100 years, whatever. And as long as the society, that resistance society, stays behind the party, then in their opinions, that's the way they see it, then they're going to survive, they're going to be fine. And there was a very interesting article in a major Lebanese newspapers a few days ago, and I think the main question of the article was this war is going to be a major test to exactly that resistance society. This is where we're going to see how solid and how solid is that tie between Hezbollah and its society, and how impactful all that social service, social action for the Lebanese society, and mainly obviously for the Shia community. We're going to see how impactful all that work was, or whether it was just like people felt grateful at the moment, but there are obviously situations where suddenly the tie is not strong enough.
Do you have any indicators there already, like from your contacts and your observations? Like, is there something already happening that one can draw any conclusions from, or is it too early?
The problem, I like, there are two different stands right now within the Shia community. Also actually outside the community, because we have all that talk about, like, we have lots of experts talking about, Lebanon may be walking towards a civil war. Obviously, that's what the Netanyahu government is hoping for. They're praying for that. And obviously their strategy of bombarding also outside the Shia areas, bombarding just average Lebanese citizens, even actually areas who had always been faithful to Israel. They attacked Ramesh and Ebel. Like, Ramesh and Ebel were like strongholds of collaborators. They worked for Israel, like they were all in favor of Israel. They loathed the guts of Hezbollah and the Shia. Never mind. The Israelis just bombarded them as well. No difference. So the idea is, from an Israeli point of view, obviously, is to bring, well, first of all, the Shia to suffer way too much and reach a point of despair that in the future, they gotta basically cut their ties with Hezbollah. And then obviously the idea is to have the other Lebanese do the work that the Israelis cannot do, which is rid them of Hezbollah on the ground. Like, why don't you start a civil war and get rid of Hezbollah for us? We do have the classical far right, the Lebanese forces, again and again, who obviously are giving signs that they could be in favor for major changes by force, if necessary, in the Lebanese society. We do have people, like some areas of Lebanon, that can be, kind of into the isolation mood from the rest of Lebanon, who so far never really saw any Shia, never lived with Shia people, and now with all the displaced, the Shia all over the place now. So whether you like it or not, you gotta have to, face that compatriot of yours. And some of them, yes, are giving like signs like of rejection, like we don't want them to stay. They're invading our areas. They are kind of disrupting the what they call the confessional balance or the demographic distribution, the confessional distribution in Lebanon. But in the same time, we have as many voices saying, no, I'm opening my doors to those displaced. And at the end of the day, we shouldn't mistake who the real problem is here. And Hezbollah, at the end of the day, is a reaction, is not the origin of the problem. So, and if we have, there's another thing, another reasoning that I hear a lot. It's, we may not like Hezbollah. We might, in another context, maybe have gone for some fight with them, but we don't want to do that on Israeli orders. And that reminds me, by the way, in 1992, when I remember when Abbas al-Musawi, who was the second Secretary General of Hezbollah in the history of Hezbollah, so he was the predecessor to Hassan Nasrallah. So the guy wasn't very well known, even in the Shia community. At that time, Hezbollah was absolutely not something relevant in Lebanese politics. It was really something very Shia, and even amongst the Shia, it was a certain kind of Shia who were really following the Hezbollah world and knowing a little bit about Abbas al-Musawi. The rest of Lebanon, you just saw him like, that kind of a boring cleric, whatever. But guess what? When he got assassinated, actually, all of Lebanon expressed the fact that they were pissed. And we had so many comments in the media coming from everywhere, all the ideologies, etc., saying, look, if that guy had died in his bed out of illness, we would have said, good riddance. But assassinated by the Israelis, that we don't like. The Lebanese, that's something the Israelis do not understand is that the Lebanese, we really like to bugger each other, and sometimes, yes, violently, but we like to do it on our own terms. We don't like to be told to fight against each other. It's that good old Arab formula, me against my brother, but my brother and I against my cousin. It works in circles. Same thing in 2017. The situation was complicated in Lebanon. For 2 years, we had a serious institutional crisis, and the Sunnis were super pissed at the Shia, and the Shia were raising their voice, etc. And the Christians were yelling all over the place. 2017, okay, Mohammed bin Salman, okay, Saudi crown prince, kidnapped. He abducted the prime minister, Sunni prime minister Saad al-Hariri, and the bet was the Sunnis, who are our clients in Lebanon, basically they're gonna start some serious confrontation with the Shia, and we're gonna have like a serious regime change in Lebanon where the Sunnis are gonna take over. We're gonna have a new government where Hezbollah will be ousted from the equation, etc. And guess what happened? All the Lebanese, all of them, basically joined their forces, and they all stood actually even against for some of them, even against their patron, the Saudi patron. The Sunnis were very harsh when they addressed the Saudi authorities. And while Saad al-Hariri was not necessarily somebody who was very popular, or definitely not necessarily charismatic in the eyes of a lot of people, but all the same, the idea of having somebody coming from the outside and say, now Lebanese, I want you to fight. Well, traditionally, it never worked. So I would say, let's keep fingers crossed that that's not going to work this time. But that does not mean that we're not going to have scores settled in a different way and maybe a little bit later. The way I see it, and then there's another question that is we don't have an answer to yet, is who is going to take care of the reconstruction. Because in 2006, both the Lebanese government, the international community, they did their best to leave Iran out of the reconstruction effort, because they knew that if Iran was to put so much money into reconstructing everything that Israel built, then Iran's going to be the big winner of the 2006 war, and that's very bad for the anti-Hezbollah political parties in Lebanon, right? So they brought in the Gulf countries like Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, etc., and they did a lot they took care of a large part of the reconstruction. Iran was kind of left aside by the Lebanese government. Obviously, they didn't care. Why? Because they took, the back door and still put a lot of money in the reconstruction, but not directly. Not on behalf of the Iranian government. They did it mainly through Jihad al-Bina and Hezbollah. So this situation today is different in the sense that the Gulf won't put probably a penny, or if they do, they will put very little money in rebuilding Lebanon. So I would say Iran has a boulevard in front of them. The Iranians have a boulevard in reconstructing Lebanon. I know that for a fact that some Shia, actually lots of Shia in Lebanon, are a little bit disappointed with the Iranians. They feel like two things. First of all, they blame the Iranians for not having done their utmost in protecting Hassan Nasrallah. There's lots of questions about, how come Hassan Nasrallah was in the suburbs that day? How come he was not in a better secured, basement, etc.?
I heard even people suggesting that might be information leaked by the Iranians, like some kind of treason or something like this. Not that I believe that. I'm just saying some people saying.
No, you're right. We did have that also. We have all sorts of theories, but we don't know, hypotheses. So a lot of Shia, like, you are basically in a way responsible for the fact that Hassan Nasrallah died that day. Another thing is the same Shia were very disappointed with the scope of the Iranian retaliation for the assassination of Hassan Nasrallah. They really didn't like the fact that they did even like less than, they did in early October, even less than what they did in April. Plus, they did a kind of a bulk operation, and they put Hassan Nasrallah and Haniyeh.
Ismail.
Ismail Haniyeh in the same bag. Like, we're going to do one retaliation for both. From a Lebanese point of view, that was like, what? I mean, with everything Hassan Nasrallah did, everything we did for Iran, etc., that's how you're going to punish Israel for basically having killed Hassan Nasrallah? Are you kidding? So basically, you have some Shia now who are like waiting for Iran to kind of make a serious makeup move. It's like, you owe us. Don't you dare basically disappoint us. And obviously, Iran is giving signals that they're not really into the idea of going like brutally at the military level against Israel. That leaves Iran in basically with one other choice, which is, if I don't want to make it up for the Lebanese through a military harsh operation against Israel, I will have to make it up through money. So if Iran understands that, if Iran does not want to see the Shia community and maybe a part of the organization within Hezbollah kind of, loosen the tie, with Iran will have to basically pour a lot of money into the reconstruction of Lebanon, and probably also into supporting socioeconomically not the displaced, but also the Shia community, and probably way further than the Shia community. They will try probably to reach other parts of the Lebanese society. Now, if they manage to do that, if they succeed in doing that, probably that would help, the Lebanese temperature go down, let's say a little bit. The problem is we are in the middle of the storm, so it's a little bit.
Yeah, of course.
So we're all we can formulate is hypothesis. We don't have like answers right now. We also need to remember that just after 2006, in the few days after 2006, some Shia actually said, what the heck, why did they do that? Why did Hezbollah, try to abduct those Israelis? They should have, be a little bit more cautious, etc. But that was, I would say, right and there and then in the moment. And guess what? Weeks later, months later, everybody was calm and quiet again. Everybody was behind Hezbollah all over again. So probably, yes, just after the war, we're going to have people who are, I'm talking the Shia community, who will be pissed, who will be like, I'm never going to be able to go back to my house, or what I lost in my house was more than just a house, or next time Hezbollah should stop taking those initiatives, whatever. We're gonna have that, most probably. I mean, that is normal, but the question is, what about in 6 months, in a year time? I don't know. And then the question is what the other communities, how the other communities are going to react. We have two different points of views. We have lots of Lebanese, as I said, from all sects, really wholeheartedly opening their doors to the displays, saying, in other times, in other situations, we might have not done that, but Israel is attacking you, meaning they're attacking us. We're all Lebanese now. We're all Lebanon. So yes. And then obviously in other areas, it's like, Jesus Christ, or, oh yeah, Muhammad, they're going to come and they will never leave again. Or, they're responsible for that whole mess. Especially if, we might have episodes of civil violence. I'm not talking civil war, but civil violence in situations where, for instance, we're going to have Shia coming into areas who never knew Shia ever. So, and in areas, for instance, that are, more Lebanese forces friendly, for instance, or some Druze areas that are really anti-Hezbollah and anti-Shia. If those displaced, for instance, voice the fact that in spite of everything that happened, they're going to stay loyal to Hezbollah, etc., we might have some episodes of civil violence. But then again, I'm trying to be optimistic here. When was that? 2 weeks ago? 2 weeks ago, something like that. The head of the Lebanese forces, Samir Jaja, is already, kind of trying to bet on the post-war Lebanon, and he in a way is convinced that his moment is coming, that the big comeback of the Lebanese forces is on track. And he eventually called for a huge meeting, in his area, in Bsharri. The whole party organized like that huge forum, and he called the forces of opposition, meaning anyone who's any political force who is against Hezbollah. He called everybody to, be part of that meeting, and in order to try to think about the Lebanon of tomorrow, the post-war Lebanon. And he put it under the banner. The slogan was like the name of three. He gave 3 resolutions, and the 3 of them are about disarming Hezbollah, or basically putting Hezbollah aside from the south and leaving the army take care of the security and the protection of South Lebanon. Okay, and I'm not going to say no one showed up, but the people he expected to show up didn't, and most of the opposition forces actually sent representative of the leaders, but none of the leaders attended. And I think that's very interesting, because it's either everybody is clever enough to say, okay, this is not the time to do this. We need to know a little bit how Hezbollah also is going to evolve. That's also another question mark. Okay, now we have Naim Asim taking over, but there's a lot to say about that. They're not sure about what Hezbollah is going to do, what Hezbollah's attitude is going to be. So it's either a lot of people are like, we're going to wait to see for the fog, to disappear a little bit, and then we'll know how we're going to, choose our stand from the whole mess. Or some people already understood that it is in the interest of absolutely no one in Lebanon, no one, to start a war, and maybe talking as calmly and as quietly as possible on from all sides of the table, of the negotiation table, of the discussion table. That might be a little bit more prudent, because I'm not sure that the majority of the Lebanese all ready for a civil war want a civil war. I honestly doubt it. But then again, we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. Okay, great. Aurélie, that should be it for today. We have at least 2 more episodes planned. The next one should be on something we've been talking about all the time already, but more dedicatedly about Lebanese politics and how that works and how it ties in with Hezbollah. Yeah. And the second one, at least the last one that is planned for now, probably not the last one anyway, is going to be about Hezbollah's international relations, like to Iran, and how we already mentioned a little bit about this in the first episode, but we're going to go more detail about this.
Okay, so one episode on Hezbollah on the domestic scene, like how it works with the Lebanese political system, and one Hezbollah on the outside.
On the international, exactly.
Yes. Okay. Perfect.
Okay, awesome. Thanks again for being here.
No, thank you.
People are really enjoying this. There's a lot of good feedback. So yeah, if anybody has any more questions, write them in the comments. We will then probably answer them in another episode, maybe. And stay tuned.
Okay.
Thanks, Aurélie.
Can
Sure.
I add personal comment? I saw someone in the comments, I think it was the first episode, who talked about the Lebanese, because I mentioned the fact that I was playing soccer when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Yes, and there was a person who said, actually, when Aurélie was playing football, the Lebanese were obviously all about like supporting the German team, and that's quite true. And myself, actually, I had the national German team shirt to play, but I was playing mainly against guys who were wearing the Brazilian shirt.
Yes. I used to go to Lebanon also as a kid a lot. So when I was there, I was flabbergasted as to how many people were with Germany, because I was always against Germany and I was always with Brazil.
Oh, come on.
I was. And my cousin too there. So my cousin Beirut, he also was the only one that was with Brazil.
No, it was especially in the 90s. It was Lebanon, Brazil, and Argentina.
Yeah, I think 96. It was. I was in Beirut when Germany won the Euro Cup, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Very sad.
The thing is, no, somebody is knocking on my door, so I have to go. But actually, in 1990, I was full blown behind, the German team. I was in love with Lothar Matthaus, and I had a huge poster of Beckenbauer in my bedroom, by the way, in front of my bed, and I was very sorry.
We will settle that score. We will settle that score another time. See you soon, Aurélie.
Ciao.
Bye.
Eure Hilfe. Wenn euch dieses Video gefallen hat, klickt auf Like, abonniert den Kanal und vergesst nicht das Glöckchen zu drücken, damit ihr benachrichtigt werdet, wenn wir neuen Content droppen.
Außerdem solltet ihr uns überall folgen, wo wir verfügbar sind. Das ist Facebook, Instagram, Twitter und Twitch. Und wenn wir irgendwelche Ankündigungen machen oder Posts, dann shared, was das Zeug hält. Gebt uns all eure Liebe.
Wir haben mittlerweile ziemlich signifikante Kosten. Wenn ihr es euch irgendwie leisten könnt, unterstützt uns doch auf Patreon. Dann kommt ihr auch in den Genuss verschiedener Vorteile, wie zum Beispiel Zugang zu unserer Discord-Community oder Zugang zu den ultrageheimen Patreon-Episoden, die wir dort posten. Außerdem könnt ihr uns natürlich auch über PayPal Spenden zukommen lassen.
Außerdem haben wir mittlerweile einen eigenen Online-Shop. Das heißt, wenn ihr euch immer noch fragt, was ihr euren Lieben zu Weihnachten, Ostern oder sonst wie schenken könnt, geht dorthin und kauft duftes Merch.
Alle Links dazu hier in der Beschreibung oder auch auf unserer Webseite 99zu1.de.
Vielen Dank fürs Dabeisein, danke für die Unterstützung und wir sehen uns in diesem Theater.